Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Healthy, Wealthy, and Smart podcast. I am your host, Karen Litzy, owner of Karen Litzy Physical Therapy, located in New York City. And today I'm really happy to have on the show a 3 times TEDx speaker who also happened to have the #1 most watched TEDx of 2024, the winner of the 2025 International Impact Book Award in Business Marketing and Brand Excellence, and global educator, coach, people first leader. Oh, and by the way, he's also a physician. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Ravi Iyer. Dr. Iyer, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Karen, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So you've done a lot, right? But
Yeah,
just to have the listeners get a little bit more feel on you and your past and kind of what led you up to today, would you mind giving us a little snippet of your background?
I was born in India. I was born in Mumbai, but I was brought up in a small, sleepy eastern town called Jamshedpur, a steel town. It was very much like Pittsburgh. Uh, uh, Steel foundries, steel mills, surrounded by mineral-rich iron ore bearing hills. And everyone got up in the morning with the sound of the factory siren, and everyone goes to bed by 6, 7 p.m. So it's pretty, everyone lived in the company provided housing or the company quarters, the
Mm-hmm.
colony. It's a very beautiful town. So very beautiful actually environment to grow up. And I grew up in that. I went to a mission school run by the Sisters of Mercy out of Philadelphia.
I
Uh,
went to a Sisters of Mercy college.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Sisters of Mercy, and it's called Little Flower School. It's still there. It's very popular. Uh, very well-known school, known for sending out award-winning students in many areas. So I was the second batch. The school started in 1964. I think I was 65. So yeah. Uh, so I was the second batch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's my background. I finished school, went from high school. I uh, did a year of college in Mumbai, Bombay University. Struggled a little bit in there. Very difficult transition from a very controlled environment in Jamshedpur to a metropolitan city where I was basically thrust into a city life without the time management and priority management skills that would be necessary to survive. I
Mm-hmm.
floundered very badly, ruined my grades, uh, came back to Jamshedpur, joined a local community college for a year, uh, struggled with identity, shame of failure, so on and so forth. Um, I had already at that time decided that I wanted to get into medical school. Um, I managed to get admission into the state medical school and went on, finished my physician's degree, and then did a shift. I went into basic science and research. So from medicine, I went to molecules, and then after doing basic research for 10 years, I shifted from molecules back to medicine. And and in the process, acquired a lot of skills in a diverse set of fields that stood me in good stead later on as a physician practicing I did my residency in George Washington, Washington, D.C., and then practicing as a physician in Northern Virginia. I started uh, combining my exposure to Eastern medicine with my knowledge of Western science and created several medicines, supplements, and herbal medicines that actually got FDA approval. And these medicines were the company I started created medicines not just for humans. We make very, very powerful, impactful medicines that apply to dogs,
Mm-hmm.
humans, and horses. So any creature that has inflammation, joint problems,
Mm-hmm.
we address it. So that's the company Active Power, and my clinic is called the Iyer Clinic. And the third thing that I started after the pandemic was getting more formally into the area of education, because I saw the immense need for education during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I was always an educator, but I was doing it without structure or format. And I decided to. So now I have this uh, triangular set of the Iyer Clinic, the Active Power, and Education Beyond Borders,
Mm-hmm.
which is a subsidiary of IR Focal Point. So those are the three things that I do. So I write and speak in the service of my educational work. I believe every physician is an educator.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So, so it became a natural segue to write, and I always was good at writing, and language was always one of my strong suits. And so, so now I actively see patients. I actively build and grow my company, Active Power, and I actively write and speak.
Right. And when do you actively sleep?
I'll tell you about it.
Okay. All right.
I,
Because
for years, I've slept 4 to 5 hours for years,
oh,
probably 50 years now.
yeah.
The last time, the 99.9% of the time, I will sleep 5 hours. And I have a theory about why I don't need to sleep that much.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely get into that in a little bit because I'd be curious to know that. And now before I do a podcast, I do research, watch your TED talk. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I also ask my guests, like, hey, if you've got any points that you really want to hit in the interview, please let me know. So in those talking points for the interview, your first talking point, and people, it's a doozy, is how does life work and how do you make life work when it doesn't? So, big question here. Given you've lived a really interesting life thus far, can you talk about how does life work and
So
what
I
happens when it doesn't?
so the question is actually a question. This question is actually an articulation of a fundamental driver of my personality. I didn't get up thinking that I had to ask this question. I From as young a child as I could remember, I was fascinated by creatures, whether it was insects or worms or fish or birds. So I was always curious what makes these creatures so diverse and wonderfully functional. And I would investigate that all through my life as a child. And um, it was an interesting, so it was only later that I actually formulated this fundamental innate curiosity into the phrase, how does life work? But I began in my teenage years, I started realizing that this innate curiosity, when I articulated it into this phrase, how does life work, it gave me a grounding, a purpose to drive my entire work of my life. So then I drove my intellectual curiosity into the field of biology, and then from there into medicine, and so on and so forth. And in the process, acquired a vast body of informational knowledge that I continue to supplement and continue to grow even to this day. And And once I got to a certain level of competence in that knowledge, the corollary of that question started to emerge. How do you make life work when it doesn't? But this particular thing was the framework for everything I did. But that alone is not enough. So the framework does not mean that you can solve the problem. For example, uh, a surgeon operates on a human being on the operating table. So the body of the patient lying on the operating table is the framework for the work he does. But the tool that he uses is his knife and the tools that assist the knife in controlling bleeding and so on and so forth, and in repairing tissue after it is cut. So the person needs to have, the surgeon needs to have not only a very intimate understanding of the field in which he is going to use the tools, he's going to have an intimate understanding of the tools that he uses. So my tool of usage was something that developed side by side with this intense curiosity, and that was my ability to focus with great clarity and concentration. And the reason I developed the skill was because I was born with a mind that constantly spun out of control. I was born with a mixture of Asperger's and ADHD.
Hmm.
Asperger's gave me a photographic memory. The ADHD gave me intense curiosity and very fragile creativity. It would jump from one idea to another. So the two became a very volatile gunpowder mix that would produce great moments of brilliance and abysmal moments of execution, and put me constantly in conflict growing up with people. The standard statement on my report cards from a teacher is, Ravi is brilliant, but he can do so much better than this, so much better. So
Mm-hmm.
it was always a sense that, hey, and for me, the very interesting thing was I realized that I wasn't living up to expectations. And I also realized that everyone around me were getting a particular story about who I am. But I also realized that they were getting that story wrong. Because in deep inside me, I knew that they didn't really understand what was making me tick. But the beauty of it was I was fortunate that it did not matter to me so much that they got me wrong. It was intensely important to me that I don't get myself wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I was driven to find out why I was the way I was. And at an early age, I started looking into this whole business of how the world appeared to me. And somewhere along the way, around my teenage years, I figured this out, that the world was entirely a conversation in my head. Everything that happened to me was a conversation. Whether someone said something, it was, I was partly listening to what they were saying, but I was also partly
Mm-hmm.
listening to what I was saying about what they were saying. So everything was a name, form, opinion, a, a meaning that was thrown up by my head, by my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And I suddenly realized that my lived experience was entirely consistent about these meanings. And at the same time as I understood this, I realized that if paid attention to a meaning, the meaning exists. If my attention goes to something else, the meaning disappears.
Got it. And so as you're growing up and you're realizing, well, first, when when did you kind of get a diagnosis of ADHD Asperger's? Was that
I
not as a
actually got it.
child?
No, no, I got it at the age of 58.
Right, right. So
So
that
growing
probably
up,
like,
yeah, growing up, nobody knew what it was
right,
when
right.
growing up. Back in 1958 in India,
Forget it. Yeah,
nobody knew.
yeah. And so how do you then focus on where you are in the moment when you've got all of this swirling around in your head, especially as a leader, as a physician, as someone who led a hospital and a hospice care? Like, that's a lot.
So the big breakthrough started happening when I was about 17, when I got this insight into how we actually live our life. And I realized it was not just me, it was everyone around me was also the same way. So, and side by side was the breakthrough that it was what I paid attention to made that thing become real.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could control my attention, I could control the way the world would show up. So I started pursuing methods of focusing attention. And for me, the thing that I used for myself was breath awareness. And I started watching my breath and things like that. I mean, there were fortuitous events that provided clues and stuff like that, but much some of it came from certain pretty ancient texts. But bottom line, it was not so much the text that saved me, but the practice. And the practice got me to a point like riding a bicycle. It got me to a point where I could ride a bicycle across a tightrope with no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And at that point, uh, several things happened. Psychologists know this as a flow state. A flow state is athletes describe it, musicians, mathematicians,
Mm-hmm.
artists, they describe it. It's a it's a state of entire focused concentration where everything resolves into just whatever you're focusing on, and suddenly time slows down, being expands to include the entire environment. Your own boundaries of self become very fuzzy, and you really, really, really become one with the activity that you are engaged in. The Zen call that satori. Zen monks, they call it satori.
Mm-hmm.
The um, Indian Advaita mystics call it samadhi or sahaja samadhi, which is natural absorption. And so, like that, flow states happen all the time. The problem is most people are not able to distinguish it, and most people are not able to enter it at will. But there are methods that allow you to gain more and more control and do it. Once you develop that, you have a great amount of power in your hand. And between 17 and 22, I became very good at it.
Right. So you were able to, I'm sure that was a huge help of getting you through medical school and residency, et cetera, when you've got moving parts all around you,
Yeah,
yet you have to concentrate on this patient in front of you, right? So there's a lot of health and medical practitioners that are listening right now who are probably thinking, how can I stay focused when I'm in this hectic environment? If you're a physician in the ER or a physical therapist in the ER for that matter, how can you concentrate and focus on this person in front of you when you're hearing beeps and yells and everything all around you? And for you, you use breath awareness. Do you do that in the moment?
yeah. Initially, you have to. So it's like exercise, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
develop muscle. You set aside time. You go to a specific place or location where you can do the activity that gives you the skill.
Mm-hmm.
So initially, you dedicate certain specific time. You remove distractions and you focus only on that work. Later, you start developing the ability to do that activity in increasing levels of distraction. So it's like bicycle riding. Initially, you drive, you learn balance, you wobble, you fall, and then you get balance. And then out of 100 people who learn balanced bicycle riding, they will use 99 of them will use that bicycle only to get to the corner drugstore. And one out of those 100 will say, you know what, I want to go to the corner drugstore, but I want to go to that corner drugstore with no hands. Like,
Mm.
and and then out of 100 people who will ride their bicycle with no hands, one of them will say, you know, I want to go to the corner drugstore, no hands and doing a wheelie, you know. So, and out of 100 who can do no hands and a wheelie, one person is going to say, I'm going to do no hands and a wheelie, but on a tightrope, you know, 10 feet above the ground. And then
Mhm.
somebody else will say, I'll do a tightrope 100 feet above the ground. So the common element between the person who's just riding the bicycle down the street to the corner drugstore and the person who's doing a wheelie with no hands on a 100-foot high tightrope, the common element is balance. But
Mm.
the uncommon element is the degree of gravitational challenge at every level. The amount of risk and the amount of challenge of losing balance and falling off.
Mhm.
So like that also focus. There'll be some people who will spend their lifetime acquire focus only if they shut the phones off and only at 4 o'clock
Right.
or 5 o'clock in the morning with no sound and everything in a cloistered room. And then so you have to develop it, and like a muscle, you will become better and better
Mhm.
as you keep expanding the boundaries of distraction. As you keep pushing yourself to be focused in the midst of distraction, there to that extent you become better and better at being focused while the world is going crazy.
Yeah. And I also have to think, aside from being a practitioner, um, but even being a leader, regardless of the size of the the organization you're leading, um, I know a lot of people, certainly in my profession, physical therapy, um, certainly experience burnout. And I have to think that being able to focus and being able to be present can help with that. So, my question to you is, have you personally navigated burnout?
Yes.
And what are the most effective strategies you can recommend for leaders to build resilience without the sacrifice of their performance or their humanity?
So burnout is entirely an identity issue. So if your identity is somebody who is doing something and is going to get rewarded out of doing that, then your ability to remain powerful and motivated is dependent on the appearance of rewards.
Mm-hmm.
If you approach your activity as you are already in a space of fully rewarded, validated space, and you are only doing this thing as a self expression, then burnout becomes very, very difficult to happen. You become extremely resilient to burnout. You will have fatigue. Fatigue is not burnout. Tiredness, achiness
Mm-hmm.
is not burnout. Burnout is a sense of invalidation. Burnout only happens when people don't feel that they have any purpose or they can't make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And that is entirely an identity issue. It is not a structural issue. It is not a reward issue. Now, so if you started your work as a physician uh, under the idea that you are going to be a physician and you are so and so doing the work of empowering people, so if the empowerment doesn't happen automatically, you are invalidated in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at yourself as a space within which the other person can find themselves to whatever extent, and you remain just a space, that requires focus. And when you acquire that, you can truly shine no matter what age. You simply can't get burnt out. See, for me, even now, I constantly deal with insurances who don't pay me what I'm worth,
Yes.
and so on and so forth. There's constant. There's great, there are incredible opportunities every day for feeling totally disempowered.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't experience disempowerment because my validation is not dependent on, you know, these factors. I don't understand. There are certain things, however, you need to set up certain structures to help you not get burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
For example, one structure is keep your needs small. I have, the most fancy vehicle I ever drove was an Infinity long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I now drive a Subaru.
Oh, that's a great car.
It's a great car. I love it.
Yeah.
Subaru Crosstrek. I like it.
Yeah.
And before that, I had a Honda Pilot because I had a couple of dogs that I would carry around.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but the point is, I I structure my life to keep my footprint small so that my threat from varying cycles of reimbursement does not threaten my existence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that makes it very, very easy to navigate the physicality of variances that happen in life.
And uh, as you're saying all this, and I noted before, you worked in hospice care, and in your TEDx talk, you talk a little bit about some of the folks that you worked with at the height of the AIDS epidemic. And for a lot of healthcare people who work in healthcare, they feel like they're going into medicine to help save lives and improve lives. But when you're working on a hospice ward or working with people where you're not saving the life. So, how do you navigate that and not burn out and not be depressed and not lose all of like,
I'm glad you asked this. So
yeah.
somebody else asked this question, and I said this to them. This whole thing is, how do you help life work when it doesn't? When I was doing medicine, that's what I was doing. But then when I started leading a hospital department, chairman of the department, it became how do you make the department work when it doesn't?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was a hospice director, there was no body to fix.
Right.
I mean, the body is already broken down. There's nothing to fix here. So then, how do you help somebody experience the dissolution of their physical frame without fear?
Mm-hmm.
So so how do you help them move from a corporeal identity to an identity of consciousness, where they experience themselves as not as a consciousness occupying a body frame that may be breaking down, but the consciousness itself is intact. And how do you help them get in touch with it? See, it's one thing to just talk fancy words about consciousness. It's completely different to actually help somebody experience themselves as space.
And how do you do that? How did you help these folks at the end of their life?
So you do certain exercises, for
Mm-hmm.
example. One is pay attention to the tides of your breath. Follow it as it goes in. You'll as you follow, you don't need to make it go fast or slow. Just
Mm-hmm.
feel the breath as it goes into your chest. And you follow it as far into your chest as you can. And there'll be a point where you can't sense it anymore. And then you will feel the breath reverse its flow and flow out of your nose on the outside path, and follow it as it leaves your body out into the air outside your body, and follow how far you can trace and be aware of its flow. And you'll notice that it flows, you'll be able to notice its flow about the same level as you can notice its flow inside. So it's this inverted U that goes in and out. And you keep focusing on just the end point of each, the outward flow and the end point of the inward flow. And keep oscillating on that. Develop the ability to stay with that flow. And at one point, your attention you'll forget the flow, and your attention will be just on the endpoint, the external endpoint, the internal point, and you'll keep oscillating between this and this, in and out, just in and out, in and out. And at that point, you will lose sense of your body, and you will experience yourself as space. A monk taught me the method when I was 22. He brought it to me from a different point, but he gave me that same experience. And from that point onwards, I was able to give some patients a sense of expansion just because of that. And you can get it. It's a practice.
Yeah.
And it is an intentional practice, and it gives people a sense of freedom from the entrapment of their circumstances.
And again, as the practitioner, you're the person who is overseeing their care. I know you said before, like, it's not about like what reward do you get, but it does have to be rewarding to you to know that you're teaching them to focus on this is hopefully helping them or giving them something.
So the essence of medicine is to allow people to experience an emergence and an expansion of possibilities available to them.
That's lovely.
So it is not about solving. See, people don't come to me because they want a diagnosis. They come to me because they have something in their life that is preventing them from experiencing life fully. And the only thing I do is either I remove the obstruction. If I can't remove it, I reduce its impact. Or if I can't do those two things, then I teach them how to transcend it, live with it.
Accept it, like an acceptance kind of?
It doesn't matter. You see, like I once told a patient, say, let's imagine you are told by your maker that you are destined to have a cancer. But the maker will tell you that you will get cancer, but the cancer you will live a full 100 years. The cancer will produce no disability. It will produce no pain, nothing, and you will end up dying of something other than the cancer, but the cancer will be there throughout your life. Does it matter that you have cancer? Disease is important only to the extent that it interferes with your ability to live.
Right.
If I show you an ability to live with your disease, I have neutralized disease. So this is the thing about living life. Human beings are not beings. We are not bodies occupying space. We are space occupying bodies. The problem is we look at ourselves as a body occupying space, and we look at everything in our life as physical things that are defined by time and space, and therefore we think that these things are options are defined and not available to us if they are not present, or they have a time limit or a lifespan and things like that. And if I don't get this opportunity right now, it will disappear. Somebody else will take it. And therefore we are constantly fighting. See, the essence
Right.
of competition is the idea of limits. The idea of limited resources is what drives competition.
Right. And also that sense of urgency. Like you said, if it doesn't happen now, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, but suddenly, if you shift a person's ideation of himself
Mm-hmm.
as space that within which opportunities generate, then he becomes inviolate. His his stand and being becomes a container for opportunities to come.
Mm-hmm.
And he remains inviolate, he remains completely calm and satisfied. And if he doesn't happen to grab this opportunity, no problem, some other opportunity he'll grab it. And what is more, the more you practice the idea of self as space, the more the people you interact with become just so many options that pop up in the space of your own being.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine when you are interacting with your significant other. I interact with my wife. My wife is an option that occupies the space of my being. And in the space of my being, she is an important part who contributes to my being.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm relating to her like that, does it matter that I have to get the validation from her this moment? No.
Right. Yeah.
It's
I need to be more like this. So after this, I'm not going to
my
have
wife,
this.
my
I'm
wife
not going to have this right after this podcast, right? I
my,
have to do some
my
work.
wife yells at me all the time.
Uh-huh.
She yells at me all the time. You know what was a big breakthrough for me?
Mm-hmm.
Was the realization that when she yells at me, she's actually loving me. Because
Yeah.
the reason for that is she does not yell at the man on the street.
Right.
So I would go to her and say, why is it that the people who are not related to you get the best part of you and I get the worst part of you?
Mm-hmm.
She says, why do you think that that is the worst part?
Right. That's your perception.
So why do you think that is the worst part? And I said, because it's so hard to take your criticism. I says, it is not the worst part. It is the part that tells you that I see you as much more able than the way you are manifesting yourself.
Mm.
And therefore, I get irritated by the way you are not living up to your potential. And I get mad at you. I do not believe that you are the kind of person who will leave your underwear on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
not believe that you are the kind of person who will make me live, empty the trash day after day without ever helping me.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not believe that you are the kind of person who should do that. And therefore, I yell at you to stop being that kind of person.
Yeah. Sounds perfectly reasonable, actually.
Yeah. So so anyway, but that is the thing, is space. And
Mm-hmm.
you come into your clinic and you see patients as space. There's an exercise I do in my leadership training. I said, two people, I will tell them, hold hands and now try to argue, fight.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't. They got to let go before they can argue.
Mm-hmm.
So connection eliminates conflict. Because you have to be two separate people to have conflict. If you're connected, then you're one. You can't have conflict. So expand that further. When you go into a patient's room and you experience yourself as space, and you go in thinking, I'm the space within which this patient is going to tell me about their story.
Mm-hmm.
And you listen, not to listen, but listen as an empty container within which the patient actually gives their story to you. You know what happens? They actually feel heard for the first time.
Yeah.
The reason people don't feel heard is because people are not listening to them. They're listening to their own inner voice tell them about what they're listening.
Right.
When you start listening as space, time and again, I have had patients who will break down and start crying because I'm listening as space. And for the first time, they actually feel that there's someone listening.
And could some people look at that and say you're listening without judgment because you're not listening to them and creating stories in your own head about what they're saying? Is that listening without judgment, or is that just,
So
how does that differentiate from just being like an open vessel for the story?
so here's the thing. When the answer to your question is, the answer to your statement is yes, that is described as listening without judgment. But the minute you try to go into that environment and say, I'm going to listen without judgment,
Mm-hmm.
you have already stopped listening. To listen without, it is like saying, I'm going to ride a bicycle. But when you actually ride a bicycle, you're not thinking about riding a bicycle.
Right. You're not thinking push right foot down, push left foot down,
You are
turn.
just
Yeah.
being.
Yeah.
Being without judgment does not look like being without judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who is not being without judgment will look at you and say he is being without judgment. But the person who is actually being without judgment will not experience himself as being without judgment. Just being. So, like for example, Michael Jordan, when he's on the court playing basketball, he doesn't experience himself as playing basketball. For him, the basketball becomes transparent. It actually disappears.
Mm-hmm.
You can experience it yourself. You ever played tennis or ever played some ball game, and
Sure.
you're in the game, and you are somebody is throwing the ball and you're batting it back, and suddenly you'll notice that the racket disappears, the ball disappears. All that is there is you moving fluidly and responding.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I played softball my whole life and I was a pitcher. So you get into those, I guess now looking back, a
Now,
flow state where I
and
wouldn't even I wasn't hearing people. It didn't
correct,
matter. I didn't hear it. I was just,
you are being pitcher.
yeah.
You are not pitching, you are being
Yes.
pitcher. So
Yes.
when you are being something, you become part of the action, and the
Mm-hmm.
action and the components of the action disappears
Yeah.
into the actor. So the actor, the action, and the acted upon all meld into one. It's called
Yeah.
in Sanskrit, they call it triputi.
Okay.
Triputi means the triad
Mm-hmm.
of observer, the observed, and the observation.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that. And
So
what I will
flow
also,
is flow is union of these three.
yeah, yeah.
And that happens when you are in space and in focus, you unite everything. And the same happens in orgasm too.
Mm-hmm.
In reproductive orgasm, the same thing happens. The actors, the action, and the experience of the action, all of that melds into one, which is why everyone wants it, because they want to have that loss of boundary, that expansion of self, that space. And you can create that space. Imagine going through your life learning how to create and be in that space of expansiveness that people experience in orgasm all the time. You think you won't be having a ball?
Yeah, you'd probably be having a pretty good time.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could certainly go on and talk about this so much more, but as we are running up on time here, um, I would love for you to talk a little bit about the TEDx talk from Gary, the one from 2024. And just so everyone knows, we'll have a link to it. So wherever you're listening, whatever platform you're on, if you scroll down to the show notes, we'll have a link straight to the TEDx talk. But if you want to talk a little bit about that, and since you gave the talk, which was 20, so not too long ago, 2024,
10 months now.
10 months. So what is the core message you want people to take away from that? And has it evolved even since you've given the talk?
So the core message is that human beings have enormous power locked in their being if they just take the time to develop it. And that is the core message. What has evolved is it has impacted a large number of people, because almost what I got out of the feedback from that talk was that almost everyone felt that it was speaking to something that they instinctively knew but never could articulate it the way it emerged in that talk. And as a result, they all resonated with it.
Yeah.
And and it has made a huge impact in the global conversation of being, of actual connecting, and actual dealing with the emerging pressure that human beings face across the world as to we are now living what is called what I call the attention economy.
Oh,
where,
100%.
where human attention has been monetized, and people are being enslaved by their attention.
Right.
And there is it is more insidious to enslave humanity through their attention than it is to put them in chains, because you can literally deprive them of the very existence, the opportunity to live. You can dictate how they live.
Yeah.
If,
Oh, no question. Just
so,
scrolling little TikToks and
yeah,
reels and 20 seconds here, a minute here, a minute there. That's why I'm so thankful to have this podcast, because people ask, well, why do you still do it? I've been doing this for over a decade now. And I said, because for me, it's 1 hour a week that I am sitting and I am speaking to someone without looking down at a phone, without, having a million other distractions, but it's a way to really connect with another person
correct.
for a solid hour each week. And it's, to me, it's very invigorating.
The connection is the lifeblood of human beings. And
Mm-hmm.
in the pandemic, that was what was so toxic, was the
Absolutely.
entire world was thrust into an isolation chamber.
Yeah.
Everyone was put into solitary confinement.
Yeah.
And as a result, human beings wither. Well, they can't connect, because during the pandemic, that's what happened. Every normal acts of human connection, just a hug, a peck on the cheek, sitting 3 feet across each other, having a conversation and coffee, all of that became potentially toxic. So,
Right.
so, and that was the basis why it was so difficult. Those 10 months of isolation was so difficult
Yeah.
for the world.
Yeah. And the world's still fighting out of it at the moment, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right. Where can people find you if they want to get more information about you and maybe they want to reach out to you?
My website is there. You can reach me through that, www.d as in David, R as in Robert, IYER.com, drier.com. And you can email me from the website, no problem. The email is right on top, Dr. Iyer at IR Focal Point. And you just email me and I respond to all my emails.
Perfect. And now, before we wrap up, I have one last question. It's one I ask everyone, and that's knowing where you are now in your life and career. What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self? So, that young guy in medical school doesn't know what ends up yet, but what advice would you give to him?
Ah, the best is yet to come.
Great advice.
Yeah, I mean, I've never felt. I'm 67 years old,
Mhm.
and I'm having a ball.
That's excellent advice. Well, Dr. Iyer, I thank you so much for all of your openness and advice throughout this interview. Like I said, I only wish I could kind of get to that state just after this podcast, but I think it's going to take some practice.
It's easy.
Yeah, but I will be practicing and I'll think about my days pitching to kind of get back into that flow of things. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yep, will do. Thank you.
And everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great couple of days and stay healthy, wealthy, and smart.